In the pre-dawn glow of Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, Eleanor Harris stood at the check-in counter of Terminal C. The air was thick with the hum of early travelers' business executives tapping on laptops, families wrangling suitcases, and the faint scent of overbrewed coffee from a nearby kiosk. Eleanor, a poised woman in her late 50s, gripped the handle of her sleek black carry-on. Her tailored gray coat and silk scarf spoke of understated elegance, but her soft southern drawl, honed by years in Savannah, carried a warmth that clashed with the sterile chill of the terminal. She had just flown in from a conference in Sao Paulo and had a tight 90-minute window to catch her connecting flight to Seattle. Every detail was meticulous. Her first-class ticket for Seat 3A, confirmed at 2 a.m., sat ready on her phone. Eleanor was no stranger to airports, having built a $950 million travel consortium, Harris Global Ventures, over 3 decades. Her company orchestrated luxury travel for high-net-worth clients, funneling thousands of passengers through hubs like Atlanta. But today, she was just another traveler, so the gate agent thought. At the counter, a woman named Carla, blonde and in her late 30s, glanced up from her screen. Her name tag gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and her smile was sharp, like a blade disguised as courtesy. "Good morning," Eleanor said, her voice steady but warm. Carla's eyes flicked over her, lingering on her face, then her coat, before settling on nothing at all. A chuckle escaped her lips, not kind, but practiced. "That's quite an accent," she said, typing without looking at Eleanor. "Where are you headed again?" "Seattle," Eleanor replied, sliding her ID and boarding pass across the counter. Carla's fingers paused, her brow arching as she tilted the screen slightly away. "Huh, that's odd." She tapped again, her voice dropping. "Looks like there's been a change. You're in 36B now. Economy." Eleanor's grip tightened on her carry-on, but her face remained calm. "I booked 3A. First class. Nonstop." Her words were measured, each syllable clear. Carla shrugged, her lips curling into a mock-sweet smile. Systems sometimes correct mistakes. Maybe there was a flag. She leaned forward, her tone dipping into something colder. "Are you sure you purchased a first-class ticket?" The question landed like a quiet slap, wrapped in politeness but heavy with assumption. Eleanor didn't flinch. The terminal's noise announcements, footsteps, rolling suitcases faded as she focused on Carla's face. The agent's smile widened, as if daring her to argue. "We just don't want any confusion on board," Carla added, her voice light again. "You'd be more comfortable in the main cabin. Less pressure." Behind her, another agent waved through a man in a wrinkled polo and cargo shorts, his boarding pass barely glanced at. "Welcome, Mr. Thompson. First class, right this way." Carla chirped, her tone suddenly bright. "No questions, no double checks." Eleanor cleared her throat. "Is there a supervisor I can speak to?" Carla sighed, as if Eleanor's request was a personal inconvenience. She made a show of radioing someone, her eyes rolling slightly. Minutes dragged on. The line behind Eleanor grew restless, a man muttering about people slowing things down. A woman huffed and switched to another counter. Eleanor stood firm, her printed ticket in one hand, her phone open to the confirmation email. No one asked to see either. Finally, a supervisor named Greg approached, clipboard in hand. He didn't meet Eleanor's eyes. "It's a system override," he said flatly. "No error. Your name's been reassigned to 36B. You'll have to take it." His tone left no room for discussion. Eleanor watched a young mother chase her toddler toward a newsstand, a group of executives huddle near a charging station, and a couple struggle with an overstuffed suitcase. The world moved on, oblivious to the quiet erasure unfolding at the counter. Something shifted in Eleanor, not anger, but clarity. She had been reduced from a name on a manifest to a problem to be shuffled aside. From across the gate, 2 employees whispered behind a podium. One, a young woman named Stacy with auburn hair, glanced at Eleanor with a mix of curiosity and disdain. The other, a man in his 40s named Paul, leaned in. "That's the one from earlier?" Stacy asked, her voice low but not low enough. Paul smirked. "She was on the first-class list. Didn't look the part, though." Their words, sharp with condescension, floated just far enough to reach Eleanor. She didn't react. She simply noted their names, their faces, and the time. 5:47 a.m. Minutes later, boarding began. Eleanor, seated off to the side, watched as a man from the check-in linea tall, white executive in his 50s approached Stacy. His ticket was for economy, but after a quick laugh and a few typed keystrokes, Stacy handed him a new boarding pass. "Group 1, sir," she said, waving him through. Eleanor checked her app. Seat 3A, once hers, was now occupied. She stood, walking toward a glass partition to view the plane being loaded. The scent of jet fuel mingled with burnt espresso from the terminal cafe. Her mind was still, but calculating. This wasn't one mistake, it was a pattern, a system that smiled while rearranging lives. As she turned back, she caught her reflection in the glass. Her coat was pristine, her posture upright, her eyes steady. Yet she knew the truth. Her displacement had nothing to do with policy. It was about perception. Somewhere between her voice and her skin, someone had decided she didn't belong in 3A. A supervisor in a navy vest, badge reading Mark, approached with a practiced smile. "Ma'am, I understand you've had issues with your boarding," he began, his voice calm but edged with hostility. "We ask that you refrain from disrupting staff or passengers further." The accusation hung between them. Eleanor blinked slowly. "I've done nothing of the sort," she said evenly. "I asked why I was moved from a confirmed seat." Mark nodded, but his eyes flicked toward a security desk where two officers watched, their postures rigid. One began walking over. "We're going to ask you to step away from the boarding area," Mark said, gesturing toward the lounge. "Just to keep things clear." As the officer neared, Eleanor's pulse steadied. She understood the script now. First, they took her seat. Then, they redefined her as a disruption. All without raising a voice. "I'll wait in the lounge," she said, rising slowly. "I expect a written explanation for this change. And I'll be requesting footage of my interactions with staff." Mark's smile tightened, but he nodded. "Of course," he said, his eyes cold. As Eleanor walked to the lounge, she felt eyes trailing her. A passenger's phone, subtly tilted, captured her passing. By the time she sat in a corner, her phone buzzed with alerts from her legal assistant in Chicago. Subject: urgent media requests. Attached was a screenshot from a private group, Elite Crew Lounge, showing her photo, taken minutes ago. The caption read, "This one's about to lose it." She claimed she had 3A. "Sure, lady." Laughing comments followed, none kind. Eleanor read each word, not surprised but confirmed. People didn't need overt cruelty to dismiss you, just a shared belief you didn't belong and a system that nodded along. She archived the screenshot, logged names, and timestamped the moment. Her phone buzzed again. Her executive coordinator, 5 time zones away. "Need confirmation to cancel all July routing through Atlanta." Eleanor typed one word: confirm. She wasn't ready to make a scene. Not yet. But she was no longer just enduring. She was building a case. Eleanor Harris sat in the lounge, her hands folded in her lap, her phone resting on the armrest. The terminal's chaos swirled beyond the glass partition. Announcements crackled, suitcases clattered, and travelers shuffled toward gates. But Eleanor's world was quiet, her focus razor-sharp. She opened a secure messaging app, her fingers moving with precision. "Initiate Phase 2, she typed. "Redirect routing and suspend vendor account 8921 through Atlanta indefinitely. Notify legal." She hit send, powered off the phone, and leaned back, her eyes scanning the terminal as if memorizing its pulse. She had built Harris Global Ventures into a titan of luxury travel, controlling routes that funneled thousands of elite passengers through hubs like Atlanta. Her company's influence wasn't just financial, it was structural, woven into the airport's concierge services, tourism packages, and private carrier partnerships. Every quarter, her network delivered high-net-worth clients, each greeted with curated hospitality that kept entire departments solvent. Eleanor didn't need to shout to be heard. She only needed to turn off the tap. Across the gate, Carla, the blonde agent who had mocked Eleanor's accent, was still behind the counter, scrolling her phone, likely checking reactions to the photo Stacy had posted. Stacy herself had returned from the jet bridge, now helping a mother with a stroller, her smile warm and effortless. The contrast was jarring. Kindness, it seemed, was selective, doled out to those deemed worthy. Mark, the supervisor, was nowhere in sight, but the security officer who had escorted Eleanor lingered near the lounge entrance, his arms crossed. his gaze sweeping the room every few seconds. Eleanor's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from her assistant, Clara, in Chicago. Vendor freeze confirmed. Press notifications prepped. Awaiting your signal. Eleanor didn't reply. She was watching a man, early 40s, South Asian, in a navy blazer, who had been seated 2 rows behind her. He had witnessed everything: the reassignment, the whispers, the security escort. As the final boarding call echoed, he stood, his steps deliberate, and approached the counter where Stacy stood. "Excuse me," he said, placing his boarding pass on the desk. "I need to know why that woman was removed from first class." His voice was calm but firm, cutting through the terminal's hum. Stacy blinked, her smile faltering before snapping back into place. "Sir, I'm not at liberty to discuss other passengers." "You made it public when you reassigned her in front of everyone," he countered. "You humiliated her. What rule did she break?" Stacy's eyes darted to the side, where a supervisor, another man in a navy vest, named Victor, emerged from a back office. "Sir, return to your seat," Victor said, his tone flat but edged with warning. "This doesn't concern you." The man folded his arms. "I'm making it my concern because it's wrong." Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If you continue, you'll be removed from the flight." The man held his ground for a moment, then turned, not out of fear but calculation. As he passed Eleanor, their eyes met. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement. She nodded back. It was enough. Inside the jet bridge, a young flight attendant named Lisa adjusted her scarf and glanced toward the lounge. She had seen the reassignment order earlier, overheard Stacy and Carla's whispers about the lady who didn't fit. Something about it gnawed at her. Eleanor didn't look like trouble, she looked like she belonged. "I think we handled that wrong," Lisa said quietly to Victor, who was checking a tablet. "She didn't do anything." Victor didn't look up. "Handle what?" Lisa frowned. "You know, they took her seat, called security. That's not protocol." Victor paused, then met her eyes. "You've been here 4 months, Lisa. Don't get soft on passengers like that. It'll make your job harder." Lisa opened her mouth, but stopped. The warning was clear. She turned back to her duties, the weight of complicity settling on her shoulders. Eleanor, still in the lounge, tapped a note into her phone. "Witness confronted staff, threatened with removal. Flight 214. She set the phone down, her thoughts expanding beyond the terminal. She had once believed systems like this could be reformed from within, but today, that belief crumbled. The airport wasn't just a place, it was a machine, rewarding silence, punishing truth, and delaying justice by design. A new officer approached, his voice neutral. "Ma'am, we need you for a standard pre-flight security review." Eleanor gathered her carry-on and followed without protest. He led her through a restricted corridor, her heels echoing on sterile tile as the terminal faded behind double doors. They bypassed security checkpoints, no scanners, no wands, no searches. They entered a small, windowless room with white walls, a bolted table, and 2 empty chairs. She sat without being asked. The officer muttered, "Someone will be with you," and left, the door clicking shut with a mechanical snap. She waited 14 minutes, not 10, not 15, but 14. No one came. No forms were presented. It wasn't a review. It was a pause, a deliberate removal from visibility. Eleanor stared at the blank wall, her posture unchanged. She had faced worse boardrooms that tried to silence her, investors who underestimated her, systems built to keep her out. But this was different. It wasn't about security. It was about diminishing her, making her feel small without ever saying the words. When the door opened, a young employee, badge crooked and shirt untucked, stepped in, looking startled. "They said someone was with you," he stammered, clutching an empty clipboard. "I'm just here to escort you back." Eleanor stood, her silence heavy. As they walked, he mumbled, barely audible, "I think they just didn't want you near first class." She stopped. "What do you mean?" Her voice was even, but it pinned him. He hesitated, eyes wide. "One of the supervisors, Victor, I think said you didn't fit the brand image. Better to keep you less visible." "I didn't agree, I swear." Eleanor didn't respond. She didn't need to. They returned to the terminal in silence, the crowd now thinning as boarding wrapped up. Stacy avoided her gaze. The man who had taken her seat was already on board, laughing with a flight attendant. The gate agent announced the flight was closed. Eleanor's name was never called. She walked past the gate, down the escalator to arrivals, and sat on a bench near baggage claim. From her coat, she pulled a secure device, not her phone, but a private line linked to partners across 4 continents. She dialed one number. "Activate Protocol E," she said calmly. "Cease all operational and consumer partnerships with Atlanta International. Freeze the August budget and reroute executive traffic to Dallas and Miami. Prioritize press through in-house counsel only." She hung up before a response came. It wasn't needed. Back at the gate, a low wave of confusion rippled through the staff. System access faltered, lounge codes failed, vendor terminals rebooted. A bulk reservation agent watched real-time cancellations flood in. An operations manager at Gate 12 paused a charter flight for Harris Global Ventures, bound for Paris. His screen flashed an urgent alert. He read the name Eleanor Harris and felt a chill. He sprinted across 3 gates, past security, until he saw her, seated alone by the glass, her coat folded, her eyes steady. "Miss Harris," he gasped, sweating. "I didn't know you were flying through Atlanta today." Eleanor stood, her voice cool. "No one knew much of anything here." He swallowed. "The staff involved. This isn't policy. It's being investigated. We'll have statements ready." "There won't be statements," she cut in. "There will be consequences. You allowed this. Your people escalated it." The silence at every level, that was the choice. In the command center below, digital maps blinked red as routes paused across 3 continents. Vendors failed to reauthorize shipments. The airport's elite traffic, curated by Harris Global Ventures, began to vanish. Eleanor stepped into a black sedan waiting outside. As it pulled away, her tablet lit up with a dashboard of live contracts, each turning red as cancellations processed. She scrolled through, verifying names she knew by heart. Atlanta's reliance on her company wasn't just financial, it was existential. And she had just pulled the plug. The black sedan glided away from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, its tinted windows shielding Eleanor Harris from the chaos unfolding inside. Outside, Atlanta's morning traffic hummed, oblivious to the seismic shift she had just triggered. Inside the car, Eleanor's tablet glowed with a cascade of red alerts: contracts dissolving, vendor accounts freezing, and elite travel routes evaporating in real time. She didn't flinch. Her face, illuminated by the screen, was calm, her eyes scanning each update with the precision of a surgeon. Harris Global Ventures wasn't just a company. It was a network, a web of influence that stretched from Atlanta to Zurich, Singapore to Dubai. And with one command, Eleanor had set it in motion to choke Atlanta's airport to its knees. Back at Terminal C, the confusion was no longer subtle. Gate agents tapped frantically at screens that refused to cooperate. Lounge access codes returned errors, stranding VIPs in crowded waiting areas. A bulk reservation agent, a harried woman named Diane, stared at her monitor as cancellations from Harris Global Ventures flooded in charter flights, seasonal packages, corporate bookings, all gone. "This can't be right," she muttered, rebooting her terminal for the 3rd time. Across the hall, an operations manager named Tom clutched a tablet, his face pale as he read the alert again. Harris Global Ventures account suspended. All routing terminated. He bolted toward the command center, his tie flapping, his mind racing. Eleanor Harris wasn't just a passenger. She was their linchpin. In the airport's top-floor boardroom, Tom burst through the doors, interrupting a meeting of executives who were still sipping coffee, unaware of the storm. "We've got a problem," he said, breathless. "Harris Global Ventures just pulled everything." Everything. The room fell silent. An older man from partner relations, gray-haired and usually unflappable, leaned forward. "What do you mean, everything?" Tom handed him the tablet. "Their entire network, concierge traffic, tourism packages, private carriers. It's gone. And it's not just us. Their partners in Europe and Asia are withdrawing too." The executive's hands trembled as he scrolled. "She's not just a CEO," he whispered. "She's our majority client. 40% of our prestige traffic runs through her routes." Another executive, a woman in a sharp blazer, chimed in, her voice tight. "If we lose her infrastructure, we're looking at a revenue crater. Months, maybe years, to recover." Tom stayed silent, staring at the dashboard as VIP contracts blinked red, one by one. He had always thought power meant loud confrontations or public scandals. What Eleanor had unleashed was quieter and far more lethal. Meanwhile, Eleanor's sedan merged onto the interstate, heading toward a private terminal where her jet waited. She made one final call. "Clara," she said to her assistant, her voice steady. "Cancel all passenger routing, terminate vendor maintenance, and freeze access across all Atlanta touchpoints. Revoke brand privileges. They'll be notified." Clara confirmed and disconnected. Eleanor leaned back, watching the city blur past. She was already thinking ahead: new hubs, new partners, new systems that didn't mistake silence for weakness. But first, she would ensure every link in this morning's chain of humiliation was severed. Not out of spite, but principle. A system that erased her deserved to feel erasure. Back at the airport, the panic spread like wildfire. Vendor accounts received instant freeze notices, and their terminals were locked out of booking systems. International partners couldn't validate premium clients through Atlanta's network. Harris Global Ventures' black-tier reservations vanished from boarding queues, leaving gate agents scrambling to explain to irate passengers. Hospitality services watched entire schedules void themselves, hour by hour. Corporate teams tried to reach Eleanor's office but were rerouted to her legal team, where a single message awaited. All terms suspended per CEO directive. Direct contact will be documented as a breach. In the command center, screens flickered with rerouting alerts, each one a domino falling. A logistics coordinator, a young man named Ryan, whispered to a colleague, "This is her, isn't it? The woman from Gate 12. His colleague nodded, eyes wide. They didn't know who she was. Nobody did. Ryan glanced at the security footage still looping on a nearby monitor. Carla's smirk, Stacy's whispered laugh, Mark's dismissive nod. "They're done for," he said quietly. By mid-morning, the financial toll was undeniable. A 31% drop in high-tier bookings hit the system like a shockwave. Luxury retail zones, reliant on Harris-affiliated clients, saw foot traffic plummet. Elite lounges, once buzzing with corporate travelers, stood half-empty. The PR team drafted a templated apology, but Eleanor's legal wing rejected it within minutes, citing insufficient accountability. Behind closed doors, executives scrambled to understand how one gate agent's decision had metastasized into an institutional crisis. They didn't yet grasp the full scope of Eleanor's influence. Over the past 30 years, she had built not just a company, but an ecosystem: luxury hotels, private jet carriers, diplomatic travel networks, all loyal to her vision. When she moved, they moved with her, not out of fear, but trust. Travel consortiums in Zurich, Singapore, and Dubai issued statements citing incompatibility with stakeholder values, pulling their programs from Atlanta. The vagueness of the phrase only deepened the airport's dread. Back at Gate 12, Carla was still behind the counter, unaware of the storm she had ignited. She processed tickets with her usual brisk efficiency, her earlier smirk replaced by a vague unease. Stacy, meanwhile, had slipped into the break room, scrolling through the elite crew lounge group. Her post about Eleanor had racked up likes, but new comments were trickling in, some from colleagues, others from strangers. "Is this real?" one read. "You posted a passenger's photo? That's a violation." Stacy's stomach churned. She deleted the post, but it was too late. Screenshots had already spread. Lisa, the young flight attendant, stood near the jet bridge, her mind still on the morning's events. She had tried to speak up, but Victor's warning silenced her. Now, as she watched passengers board, she felt a pang of guilt. Eleanor hadn't caused a scene, hadn't raised her voice. Yet the system had punished her anyway. Lisa glanced at her phone, where a news alert popped up: Atlanta airport faces vendor crisis after client pullout. She didn't need to read the article to know who was behind it. In the lounge, a passenger who had witnessed the incident, a retired professor named Dr. Samuel Chun, sat with his laptop open. He had seen everything. Carla's condescension, Stacy's whispers, the security escort. He was drafting an email to a contact at a national news outlet, attaching a video he'd discreetly recorded. "This wasn't just rudeness," he wrote. "It was systemic. A woman was humiliated for her accent and her skin, and no one stopped it." He hesitated, then hit send. The story was no longer confined to the terminal. Eleanor, now at her private terminal, boarded her jet for Seattle. As the plane taxied, her tablet buzzed with an update from a legacy partner. "Withdrawal from Atlanta complete. Awaiting your next directive." She smiled faintly, not out of triumph, but resolve. The airport had underestimated her, assuming her silence was surrender. They were about to learn what silence could do. Back at Hartsfield-Jackson, Tom faced the boardroom again, his voice hoarse. "We need to act now," he said. "Statements, firings, audits, whatever it takes to stop the bleeding." The partner relations executive shook his head. "It's not about statements. She's not fighting in public. She's fighting with leverage. And we're losing." The room fell quiet, the weight of their miscalculations settling in. They hadn't just lost a client. They had lost control. The jet carrying Eleanor Harris climbed into the Georgia sky, leaving Atlanta's skyline behind. Inside the cabin, Eleanor sat alone, her tablet resting on the polished wood table. The screen displayed a live feed of Harris Global Ventures operations grids of contracts, partner logs, and financial streams, all shifting as her directives took hold. Each red alert marked another severed tie to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. She scrolled through the list, her expression unreadable. This wasn't vengeance. It was accountability, surgical and deliberate. Atlanta had treated her as invisible, and now she was making her presence undeniable. Below, the airport was a cauldron of panic. In the command center, screens flashed with errors as routing systems collapsed. A logistics supervisor, a wiry man named Carl, slammed his fist on a desk. "How does one woman do this?" he barked, staring at a map where Harris-affiliated routes blinked out across 3 continents. His colleague, a younger woman named Priya, shook her head. "She's not just one woman. She's Harris Global Ventures. We didn't just lose a passenger who lost our backbone." Upstairs, in the executive boardroom, Tom, the operations manager, faced a firing squad of grim faces. The partner relations executive, now visibly shaken, held up a report. 31% drop in high-tier bookings, he said, his voice hollow. "And that's just today? By next week, we're projecting a 40% loss in prestige traffic. Hotels, lounges, carriers theory, all pulling out because of her." A woman from finance added, "Vendors are locked out. We can't even process new bookings for half our elite programs." Tom rubbed his temples. "What do we do? Apologize? Beg?" The room turned to the PR director, a polished woman named Laura, who clutched a draft statement. "We've tried apologies," she said. Her legal team rejected them. "They're not interested in words, they want action." The partner relations executive snorted. "Action? She's not giving us a chance. She's dismantling us from the inside out." Silence fell, heavy with the realization that Eleanor's silence was louder than any press conference could ever be. Back at Gate 12, Carla was mid-shift, processing a line of passengers with her usual efficiency. But her earlier confidence had eroded, replaced by a nagging unease. Whispers had spread among the staff something about a major client pulling out, systems crashing, jobs on the line. She glanced at Stacy, who was pale, her phone tucked away after deleting her post. The elite crew lounge group was now locked, but screenshots of Stacy's photo and caption had leaked beyond the airport. Passengers were starting to notice, some casting sidelong glances at the counter. Lisa, the young flight attendant, stood near the jet bridge, her stomach churning. She had replayed the morning's events in her mind: Carla's smirk, Stacy's whispers, Victor's dismissal of her concerns. She wanted to act, to say something, but the weight of Victor's warning held her back. "Don't get soft," he'd said. Yet the news alerts on her phone headlines about Atlanta's vendor crisis made it clear this wasn't just about one passenger. It was about a system that had failed, and she had been part of it. Outside, Dr. Samuel Chen's email had reached its destination. A national news outlet, already sniffing around the airport's troubles, received his video of Eleanor's treatment. The footage was grainy but damning: Carla's condescending tone, Stacy's hushed laughter, the security officer's approach. By noon, the story broke online. Atlanta Airport faces backlash after alleged discrimination against VIP passenger. The article didn't name Eleanor, but it didn't need to. The details: a black woman, a southern accent, a first-class seat taken painted a vivid picture. Comments flooded in, some outraged, others skeptical, sparking heated debates about bias in travel. Inside the terminal, the fallout was immediate. Passengers at Gate 12 began asking questions. A middle-aged woman in a business suit approached Carla, her voice sharp. "Is this the gate where that woman was humiliated? I saw it online." Carla froze, her smile brittle. "I'm not sure what you mean, ma'am." The woman scoffed, pulling out her phone. It's all over the news. You treated someone like garbage because of how she looked. Is that how you run things here? Carla stammered. But the line behind the woman grew restless, murmurs spreading. In the break room, Stacy sat alone, her hands shaking. The leaked screenshot of her post had reached HR, and a colleague had warned her. They're pulling records. You're in trouble. She thought of Eleanor's face, calm but piercing, and regretted not just the photo but the laugh she'd shared with Paul. It had seemed harmless at the time, a fleeting jab in a busy morning. Now, it was a noose tightening around her career. Eleanor, now airborne, received a secure message from her legal team, media coverage escalating. No comment advised. Press strategy ready if needed. She set the tablet aside. She had no intention of speaking publicly. The airport's unraveling was her statement, written in canceled contracts and frozen accounts. Her phone buzzed again. Clara, her assistant. 28 emails from Atlanta execs in the last hour. They're pleading for a meeting. Eleanor's reply was brief. No meetings. Legal only. By late afternoon, the airport's internal purge began. HR, flanked by legal counsel and 2 security supervisors, approached Carla mid-shift. She laughed nervously, thinking it was a mistake, but the lead representative's face was stone. You're terminated effective immediately, he said. Your actions this morning violated conduct codes, caused material damage to client relationships, and compromised our brand. Carla's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't know who she was, she whispered. I didn't mean. Her words dissolved as a security officer motioned her toward the employee exit. Passengers watched, some filming, as Carla, once so smug, was escorted out, clutching a small bag of belongings. Her stunned expression mirrored the shock rippling through the staff. Victor, the supervisor who had dismissed Lisa's concerns, faced a similar fate in a back office. The memo cited willful neglect of protocol and complicity in reputational harm. 2 others in his chain of command were reassigned pending review. Stacy's suspension was upgraded to termination after HR uncovered prior complaints about her conduct, buried but now resurfaced. The news cycle accelerated. Outlets ran soft focus footage of Carla's exit, speculating about the unseen force behind the airport's collapse. Commentators debated the incident's roots: racial bias, corporate arrogance, or both. Social media erupted, with hashtags like AtlantaGate trending. Some defended the staff, arguing they were overworked and unaware of Eleanor's status. Others condemned the system, pointing to the video as proof of entrenched prejudice. The story wasn't just about one woman. Anna Maria was a mirror, forcing everyone to confront their own biases. In Seattle, Eleanor landed at a private airfield, her jet taxiing to a hangar where her team waited. Clara greeted her with a tablet of updates. Zurich and Dubai partners have fully withdrawn. Atlanta's projecting a $200 million loss by Q3. Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. And the staff? She asked. Clara hesitated. 3 terminations so far. More under review. The media's circling, but no one's named you yet. Eleanor's lips curved slightly. Good. Let them focus on the system. It's the real story. Back at the airport, Tom stood in the boardroom, facing executives now desperate for a lifeline. We need to rebuild trust, he said, his voice strained. Audits, training, public accountability, whatever it takes. The partner relations executive shook his head. It's not enough. She's not fighting for an apology. She's fighting for reform. And she's winning. The room fell silent, the weight of their failures settling in. They hadn't just underestimated Eleanor, they had underestimated the cost of silence. As night fell, the airport's elite lounges stood eerily quiet, their usual buzz replaced by uncertainty. Vendors removed signage tied to Harris-approved programs, and their contracts were voided. A maintenance crew scrubbed a Harris Global Ventures logo from a concierge desk, each swipe a reminder of what had been lost. The system was wounded, and Eleanor's reckoning was only beginning. Eleanor Harris stepped off her private jet into the cool Seattle evening, the Puget Sound shimmering faintly in the distance. Her team, a small but efficient group of advisors, awaited her in the hangar, their tablets glowing with updates. Clara, her assistant, handed her a fresh report. Atlanta's losses are mounting. Projected $250 million by Q4. They've launched an internal audit, but partners are still pulling out. Eleanor nodded. her eyes scanning the numbers. And the media? Clara hesitated. They're digging, but your name's still out of it. The stories about the system now bias, power, silence. Eleanor's lips curved into a faint smile. Exactly where it belongs. She climbed into a waiting SUV, her mind already shifting to the future. Harris Global Ventures was rerouting its elite traffic through Dallas and Miami, hubs that had courted her for years. New partnerships were forming, built on mutual respect rather than complacency. But Eleanor's focus wasn't just on business. She was thinking of the bigger picture systems that failed, the people who enabled them, and the ones who could change them. Her silence had toppled a giant, but it was her strategy that would rebuild something better. Back at Hartsfield-Jackson, the airport was a shadow of its former self. Elite lounges, once alive with corporate chatter, sat half-empty, their marble counters polished but unused. Luxury retail zones, reliant on Harris-affiliated clients, reported a 40% drop in sales. Maintenance crews worked overtime, removing every trace of Harris Global Ventures logos, signage, even branded napkins in the VIP bars. The absence was palpable, a void that no press release could fill. In the boardroom, Tom faced the executives, his voice hoarse from hours of crisis meetings. "We've lost 42% of our prestige traffic," he said, pointing to a chart projected on the wall. "Hotels, carriers, tourism boards theory gone. We need a complete overhaul. Training, protocols, culture, everything." The partner relations executive, his face lined with exhaustion, nodded. "We allowed a gate agent to spark this. But it wasn't just her. It was us. We let the system rot." The finance director added, "We're hemorrhaging cash. If we don't act, we're looking at layoffs by Christmas." The PR team, led by Laura, had shifted tactics, releasing a detailed statement admitting systemic failures and outlining a reform plan, mandatory bias training, revised protocols, and an independent review board. But the public wasn't appeased. Online, Atlantagate trended for days, with debates raging. Some called the incident overblown, arguing Carla and Stacy were scapegoats for an overstretched industry. Others saw it as a wake-up call, proof that prejudice thrived in corporate politeness. Dr. Samuel Chen's video, now viral, fueled the fire, its grainy frames replayed on news channels alongside footage of Carla's escorted exit. Carla, now jobless, sat in her Atlanta apartment, staring at a box of belongings from her locker. The news played on her TV, dissecting her actions. "I didn't know who she was," she muttered, but the excuse felt hollow. She remembered Eleanor's steady gaze, the way she'd unfolded her crumpled ticket without a word. Carla opened her laptop and searched for jobs, but the stain of her termination followed her. A friend texted her a link to a nonprofit called Horizon Rising, focused on workplace equity. Carla hesitated, then bookmarked it. She wasn't ready to face her mistakes, but the seed was planted. Stacy's fall was quieter, but no less brutal. After her termination, she vanished from the airport scene, her social media accounts deleted. Months later, an application landed at Horizon Rising, submitted under her full name, Stacy Marie Evans. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I posted that photo because I thought it was funny. I was wrong. I want to learn what I ignored." The application went unanswered, but it reached Eleanor's desk. She didn't reply directly. Instead, she forwarded it to the nonprofit's director with a note. "Give her a chance to prove herself." Victor, the supervisor, faced a different path. His exit interview cited outdated conflict management and bias escalation. The word stung, not as an insult, but a truth. A colleague sent him a link to an online course on equity leadership, designed by Horizon Rising. One module, Terminal Silence, dissected a real-life airport incident anonymized but unmistakable. Victor recognized himself in the supervisor who stood idle. He enrolled, completing the course in 8 weeks. His final reflection read, "I didn't lose my job because of one day. I lost it because I let bias become normal." He later joined a transport training program in Charlotte, coaching young staff on empathy and de-escalation. He never excused his role, but he worked to atone. Eleanor, now settled in Seattle, continued leading Harris Global Ventures with unwavering focus. Her foundation, Horizon Rising, expanded into media, healthcare, and education, training thousands in equity and restorative justice. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her words carried weight. At a private summit in San Francisco, a CEO asked about her defining moment. She paused, then said, "It was the day I chose silence over noise." Silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. And sometimes, it's the spark that forces change. The room absorbed her words, not with applause, but with quiet understanding. The airport, wounded but wiser, began to rebuild. New protocols required double checks on seat changes, with supervisors held accountable. Bias training became mandatory, with real-world scenarios drawn from terminal silence. A memorial plaque, discreet but visible, was installed near Gate 12, honoring the passenger who reminded us to listen. It didn't name Eleanor, but it didn't need to. Her impact was etched into the airport's bones. By spring, Atlanta's losses stabilized, but the scars remained. Elite traffic never fully recovered, with Dallas and Miami siphoning off Harris-affiliated clients. The airport's culture shifted, slowly but noticeably. Gate agents smiled less reflexively, checked tickets more carefully. Supervisors lingered near counters, wary of oversights. Passengers, too, were different, quicker to question, slower to ignore. Dr. Chin's video had changed the narrative, making travelers allies rather than bystanders. Eleanor never returned to Hartsfield-Jackson. Her routes now flowed through hubs that valued her vision. But her influence lingered, a quiet force that reshaped an industry. She didn't need headlines or interviews, her actions spoke louder. Horizon Rising grew, training a new generation to challenge systems, not just endure them. Carla, Stacy, and Victor, in their ways, became part of that change, their mistakes a painful but necessary lesson. As Eleanor stood in her Seattle office, overlooking the city, she opened a report from Horizon Rising. A new cohort had completed terminal silence, their reflections echoing her journey. Silence can be power. Listening can be justice. She closed the report, her work far from done. The reckoning wasn't just Atlanta's, it was hers, and she would carry it forward, one quiet step at a time. This story of Eleanor Harris and the silent reckoning at Hartsfield-Jackson is more than a tale of one woman's triumph. It's a mirror to the violence and injustice we encounter in everyday systems. From subtle bias to overt humiliation, these moments shape our world. What struck you most? Was it Eleanor's strategic silence, the system's collapse, or the redemption of those who failed her? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Where do you stand on confronting bias and injustice in your own life? Let's start a conversation. Your voice matters.